Welcome back to the Coach Dad podcast. I'm your host, Momma Rush, and I'm here with none other than Coach Dad himself. Today's episode is titled 90-10. We're taking a closer look at what it means to be refined through life's challenges, how certain mindsets can quietly hold people back, and the influence of words, both the ones spoken to us and the ones we speak into ourselves. This is a conversation about growth, influence, and the kind of legacy we choose to build. Coach Dad, you ready to get into this?
Absolutely. Let's do this.
Let's do it. Okay, we'll go right into that first question. So you've brought up the story of the silversmith in connection with growth and refinement. Can you explain what that story represents and how it connects to the process of becoming great?
So, the silversmith is a story that I got from the Bible in the book of Malachi, chapter 3, where it's talking about God taking them through a fire to burn off the dross, to burn off the impurities
Mhm.
or the things that are not needed. And each athlete, each person, each individual needs to go through a refiner's fire because we've picked up so much junk along the way. And so, why this is applicable to athletes is unfortunately,
Mm.
there are bad actors, there are bad contributors to their lives along the way. They're bad teachers, they're bad coaches, they're bad parents unintentionally,
Right.
bad uncles and aunts and friends and relatives. And many times things are said in passing that have lifelong implications.
Mm.
And until you deal with those things, you can't even get to the headspace they need to be in to be successful.
Okay. So talk about that a little bit. Like when you say like bad actors, and I'm glad you said unintentional because I don't think it's anybody's intention
Mhm.
to say something that could have a lasting negative impact on a young person's life.
So we're going to get to that.
Okay.
Because
Oh.
first the concept I want to introduce is called learned helplessness. Learned helplessness. It's a state where you convince yourself in your mind, I'm never going to be good at this.
Mm.
I'm never going to get past this. You know what? There's always going to be favoritism. It's never going to be my chance.
Right.
Instead of having an overcoming, thought process where I'm going to overcome this obstacle, I'm going to get around it. I'm going to be mentally strong enough to get to the other side of it. I'm going to give this coach no choice but to select me.
Mm.
I'm going to give this teacher no choice but to look at my paper in a different light. I'm gonna battle past my adversity and not just wallow in it and accept it.
Mm.
I'm not helpless in this situation. But we often learn that and we end up reinforcing it through comments, through culture, through a great many things that I'm going to get into. The first thing I want to talk about is you got to be careful of who's speaking into your child.
Mm. You're jumping into my second
Oh
question.
man.
we're literally on the same page here. Let
Yeah,
me
yeah. Go ahead.
let me present it to you. So, as you've just stated, you've cautioned about being mindful
Yeah.
of who's allowed to speak into our kids. What do you mean by that?
Mhm.
And why is it so important to pay attention to those voices?
There's several contributors in our lives that end up tearing us down. And again, I want to reiterate that it may not be intentional. For some it is, but for some it's not. And so when you think about teammates, you think about coaches, you think about teachers, they'll say something to you out of frustration, and they'll say something to you again in passing that they may not have meant to be crushing to you. But dependent on that child's connection to you, it could be devastating because that child trusts you with their heart, they trust you with their success, they believe that you have their best intentions in mind. And I've heard teammates tear their teammates down, and that kid looks up to that other kid.
Mhm.
And whether it's your teammate, whether it's your child, whether it's your student, It's never beneficial to tear a kid down. It's never beneficial to tear another adult down, contrary to popular thought. But we get so frustrated with life, we can't formulate the words just to say, hey, you're not doing what I need you to do, and I'm frustrated, or this hurts me. So what we do is we cut, we pierce, and we, begin to tear down out of frustration, but you don't get to bring that back. Reminds me of an analogy that was given one time where somebody is walking in their brand new white shoes and you come by and you step on them and now there's mud all over them and you say sorry, hey, I really didn't mean to do that. And some time goes on and they come back and they jump all over your shoes. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
Wow.
It didn't take away the dirt from the shoe. It didn't take the fact that I now have to clean those shoes off. I now have to come behind you and correct what you just did. Even if you tell me you're sorry, it doesn't negate the fact that you just did it.
Right.
There's still dirt on it. There's still hurt from it. There's still a
Ah,
pain that lingers
that's a good
that
analogy.
somebody has to clean up or the shoes stay dirty.
That's a good analogy. I had him a little pause because I'm thinking in my head, how can we make a T-shirt out of that?
Right. Well, the thing that we need to note is that as adults, we walk around with scars. We walk around with scars from our own childhood, and what you hear from us is what you heard from our parents.
Mhm.
I already know what your parent sounds like by meeting the kid
Right.
and seeing how you interact. I know how your parent interacted with you because whether you want to or not, you become that individual. And there's a book I'm reminded of is called The Pedagogy of the Oppressed. You heard me talk
I
about it
have.
before. And within that book, it talked about the oppressed have one image of power,
Right.
and that's of the oppressor.
Of the oppressor.
Yeah. And so when they finally gain power, they finally become the one in charge. The only image they have is the one that oppressed them.
The behaviors of the
So
oppressor.
they come back and they perform that same behavior. And so now, unintentionally, you don't mean to be cruel, but abuse people abuse.
Right.
You haven't dealt with your issues. And now here you are reproducing the cycle that was done to you.
I think that's a very interesting way of talking about the oppressor and the abuser. And I'll tell you why.
Mhm.
Because I still hear compassion. I hear compassion in what you're saying, compassion for whatever circumstances led the oppressor to be the oppressor.
Mhm.
That's a deep concept. I
Right.
feel like it really that takes a lot of emotional intelligence to get to that point. And I think about it in the context of what we're talking about. 'Cause oppressor is a really strong word and that
Yeah.
carries a strong connotation. But when we're talking about it in terms of a coach
Mhm.
or a teacher or a parent, these are people that want the best for you, but
Right.
maybe their way of going about it is not the best way to go about it.
Right.
So we can't look at them like a villain
Mhm.
because they got to that point somehow. There were people in their lives that shaped them to be that. But I'll take you back to as a parent, if I hear something or if I see something, how do I now pull little Johnny aside to use your same context
Mhm.
and say, I heard that, or, let's open up this door of, this conversation with your child to say to be able to identify those things that they've heard that might be destructive to them.
As I said to you earlier, um, it may not be your fault, but it's still your responsibility. You need to go back and clean the dirt off the shoes that have now been stepped on by a coach, by a teacher, by whoever. And how do you even find out is you need to be having daily conversations with your child. Daily conversations, debriefing. How did it go today? What kind of things affected you? Having an understanding of what has transpired so you can be a part of the healing, the cleansing, the refining, if you will, getting rid of the bad stuff and pouring back in some good stuff. And what I mean by reminding them of who they are. When I hear kids say things like, I don't like public speaking, Well, I don't like speaking in front of everybody else. I'm not good at math. Who told you?
Who told you?
Who told
Where'd you
you?
get that from?
Where'd you get that from? And so you've heard me talk about that before as God came back to the garden and was looking for Adam, and Adam was hiding because he was naked. I said, who told you you were naked?
Mm-mm.
Where'd you get that from? Clearly, somebody has been speaking into your ear. Where are you getting these things from? These self-fulfilling prophecies that you're now telling yourself that I can now let me now help you clean that up. Let me now help remove that so that we can get back on a track that's going to be beneficial for you in the future that God has for you.
Hmm. Well, along those same lines, you've pointed out that people can normalize dysfunction and even pass down the same words or behaviors they once experienced. Why do you think this cycle continues? And what does it take to stop it?
Well, you only know what you know. And um, I don't want to make this about self-help and people working on themselves, but everybody should be working on themselves. Everybody should be taking self-reflection. But again, because we've gone through the process of normalizing dysfunction, we pass it off as, oh, well, you just being a man, or you just being, you gotta be tough. You gotta, be this or that, and you're dying inside. You're drinking at night.
Mm,
You're failing at work because of all the things that's been said to you that you refuse to deal with, that still live in little boxes you've packed away and never got back to.
mm.
You're hurting. But instead of being able to communicate that you're hurting, you hurt other people.
So, with our own kids, what kind of conversations do you have to unpack some of those outside conversations that they have with people? And how do you bring them back to what God called them to and who they are?
So for us, we try to remind them of who God said they were,
Right.
and to remind them of their purpose and their dreams. And all these things that we're talking about removing, these are dream killers.
Hmm.
These are things that keep you from succeeding, from keep you from elevating, keep you from going higher because these people, whoever it is, has said this to you. You begin to say it to yourself. And as I talked about before, this is called a self fulfilling prophecy, where they no longer have to tell you you're not fast enough. You tell yourself. You'll say things like, I'm not good in math, or I'm not good at that, or I only do this. Who told you you only do that?
Right.
You only do that. You only put yourself in that box because somebody laughed at you, because somebody's made you feel dumb, because somebody ridiculed you.
That's heartbreaking.
So in debriefing with one of our children, um, I heard them say, you know, I just felt embarrassed, and I felt like, that if I didn't, play a lot in the beginning, that somehow, people would laugh at me and so forth, so on. Where'd you get that from? I don't really know where I
Mm.
got it from, but somebody spoke that. Let me tell you, let me bring you back into perspective of the situation. Let me help you translate, interpret where you are. And that's my role, to help my child to interpret the situation, to interpret what the coach really means. He said this to you out of frustration, but here's what he really needs from you. Here's what he is trying to say to you. And here are the things we're going to do as a response to that. Here's what we're going to work on so that he won't get to this place of frustration with you. And that's my role in connecting with my child so that he can understand better, instead of just accepting the negative words. Let me help him interpret what's being said, and let me speak back into him.
I love that. Okay. When it comes to young adult athletes, for example, how can they recognize when negative or destructive things are being spoken over them? And what practical steps can they take to reframe those words into something beneficial and productive for their growth? And I'm talking about, you know, athletes that maybe they don't speak to their parent every day, not like a high school athlete, but someone who is on their own.
Well, again, doing an inventory of what kind of things in my mind do I think I cannot do, and where I get that from?
Hmm.
Where did that come from? And how do I now begin to reverse that? Because There's nothing I cannot do. I may not be able to do it today, but I can do this. I can get this figured out. But what are those barriers? I may not even remember where it came from. It's not relevant. Not, but what is relevant, again, not my fault, but my responsibility.
Right.
What is relevant is that I get through it. Okay, maybe I'm not great at math. Maybe it was simply because I had a bad teacher, but doesn't mean I can't learn math.
Right.
Doesn't mean I can't public speak. Doesn't mean that I can't be good at a certain position. I may not be good today, but let me remove that barrier. Let me get over the mental hurdle of that barrier so that I can be good tomorrow. But it begins with a self reflection, an inventory of all the things that I've convinced myself that I cannot do.
I like that. So, what I'm hearing you say is focus on the things that I perceive that I cannot do. Where did I get that from?
Mhm,
And understand that I can do all things, right? You know where I'm going with
mhm.
this.
All things through
All
Christ
things.
who strengthens me. Continue.
I simply may not be able to do that now, but I can do that.
Right.
I love that. That's something I'm taking away from this. Well, I was getting ready to wrap up, and then I realized we titled this episode 90-10, but we never explained what that meant. So, can you tell us what that 90-10 actually means?
Well, this is going to be a part of a series that we're going to do talking about the fact that 90% of what it takes to be successful in any endeavor is going to be the mental game. And if you strengthen the mind, everything else will follow.
Hmm.
Because it's in your mind that you develop the discipline, that you develop the routine, the consistency, and all those things that's going to help you refine the body.
And the 10,
The 10 is the physical. The 10 is the actual carrying it out. It's
the execution?
the execution. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go. 90-10 explained by Coach Dad. And that is a wrap on this episode of the Coach Dad podcast. If today's conversation gave you something to think about or encouraged you in your own journey, share it with someone who needs to hear it. You can find past episodes and more resources at www.podpage.com/coach-dad with 3Ds. And remember, dedication fuels you, discipline shapes you, and development carries you. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment wherever you're listening. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.